Welcome to Pastor Andrew's Inspirations. Who was Aaron? Aaron was a prophet, a high priest, and the brother of Moses in the Abrahamic religions. Knowledge of Aaron along with his brother Moses comes entirely from religious texts, such as the Bible and Quran. The Hebrew Bible relates that unlike Moses, who grew up in the Egyptian royal court, Aaron and his elder sister Miriam remained with their kinsmen in the eastern borderland of Egypt. When Moses first challenged the Egyptian king about the Israelites, Aaron served as his brother's spokesman, a prophet to the Pharaoh. Part of the law or Torah that Moses received from God at Sinai granted Aaron the priesthood for himself and his male descendants, and he became the first high priest of the Israelites. Aaron died before the Israelites crossed the North Jordan River, and he was buried on Mount Hor. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 6 says, "He died and was buried at Mosra." Aaron is also mentioned in the New Testament of the Bible. According to the book of Exodus, Aaron first functioned as Moses' assistant. Because Moses complained that he could not speak well, God appointed Aaron as Moses' prophet in Exodus chapter 4 verse 10 to 17 and chapter 7 verse 1. At the command of Moses, he let his rod turn into a snake. Then he stretched out his rod in order to bring on the first 3 plagues. After that, Moses tended to act and speak for himself. During the journey in the wilderness, Aaron was not always prominent or active. At the battle of Amalek, he was chosen with Hur to support the hand of Moses that held the rod of God. When the revelation was given to Moses at biblical Mount Sinai, he headed the elders of Israel who accompanied Moses on the way to the summit. While Joshua went with Moses to the top, however, Aaron and Hur remained below to look after the people. From here on in Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, Joshua appears in the role of Moses' assistant, while Aaron functions instead as the first high priest. The books of Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers maintain that Aaron received from God a monopoly over the priesthood for himself and his family's male descendants. The family of Aaron had the exclusive right and responsibility to make offerings on the altar to Yahweh. The rest of his tribe, the Levites, were given subordinate responsibilities within the sanctuary. That's in Numbers chapter 3. Moses anointed and consecrated Aaron and his sons to the priesthood and arrayed them in the robes of office. We see this in Leviticus chapter 8 and Exodus chapters 28 and 29. He also related to them God's detailed instructions for carrying out their duties while the rest of the Israelites listened in the book of Leviticus. Aaron and his successors as high priest were given control over the Urim and Thummim, by which the will of God could be determined in Exodus chapter 28 verse 30. God commissioned the Aaronite priests to distinguish the holy from the common and the clean from the unclean, and to teach the divine laws of the Torah to the Israelites in Leviticus chapter 10 verse 10 and 11. The priests were also commissioned to bless the people in Numbers chapter 6 verses 22 to 27. When Aaron completed the altar offerings for the first time, and with Moses blessed the people, and the glory of the Lord appeared unto all the people, and there came a fire out from before the Lord, and consumed upon the altar the burnt offering, and the fat, which when all the people saw, they shouted and fell on their faces. That's in Leviticus chapter 9 verses 23 and 24. In this way, the institution of the Aaronite priesthood was established. In later books of the Hebrew Bible, Aaron and his kin are not mentioned very often, except in literature dating to the Babylonian captivity and later. The books of Judges, Samuel, and Kings mention priests and Levites, but do not mention the Aaronites in particular. The book of Ezekiel, which devotes much attention to priestly matters, calls the priestly upper class the Zadokites, after one of King David's priests. It does reflect a two-tier priesthood with the Levites in subordinate position. A two-tier hierarchy of Aaronites and Levites appears in Ezra, Nehemiah, and Chronicles. As a result, many historians think that Aaronite families did not control the priesthood in pre-exilic Israel. What is clear is that high priests claiming Aaronite descent dominate the Second Temple period. Most scholars think the Torah reached its final form early in this period, which may account for Aaron's prominence in Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. Aaron plays a leading role in several stories of conflicts during Israel's wilderness wanderings. During the prolonged absence of Moses on Mount Sinai, the people provoked Aaron to make a golden calf in Exodus chapter 32 verses 1 to 6. This incident nearly caused God to destroy the Israelites in Exodus chapter 32 verse 10. Moses successfully intervened, but then led the loyal Levites in executing many of the culprits. A plague afflicted those who were left in Exodus chapter 32 verses 25 to 35. Aaron, however, escaped punishment for his role in the affair because of the mediation of Moses, according to Deuteronomy chapter 9 verse 20. Later retellings of this story almost always excuse Aaron for his role. For example, in rabbinic sources and in the Quran, Aaron was not the idol maker, and upon Moses' return begged his pardon because he felt mortally threatened by the Israelites in the Quran chapter 7 verses 142 to 152. On the day of Aaron's sanctification, his oldest sons Nadab and Abihu were burned up by divine fire because they offered strange incense in Leviticus chapter 10 verses 1 to 3. Most interpreters think this story reflects a conflict between priestly families sometime in Israel's past. Others argue that the story simply shows what can happen if the priests do not follow God's instructions given through Moses. The Torah largely depicts the siblings Moses, Aaron, and Miriam as the leaders of Israel after the Exodus, a view also reflected in the biblical book of Micah. Numbers 12, however, reports that on one occasion Aaron and Miriam complained about Moses' exclusive claim to be the Lord's prophet. Their hypothesis was rebuffed by God, who affirmed Moses' uniqueness as the one with whom the Lord spoke face to face. Miriam was punished with a skin disease, zarat, that turned her skin white. Aaron pleaded with Moses to intercede for her, and Miriam, after 7 days' quarantine, was healed. Aaron once again escaped any retribution. According to Numbers 16 and 17, a Levite named Korah led many in challenging Aaron's exclusive claim to the priesthood. When the rebels were punished by being swallowed up by the earth in Numbers chapter 16, verses 25 to 35, Eleazar, the son of Aaron, was commissioned to take charge of the censers of the dead priests. And when a plague broke out among the people who had sympathized with the rebels, Aaron, at the command of Moses, took his censer and stood between the living and the dead till the plague abated in Numbers chapter 17 verses 1 to 15, and also chapter 16 verses 36 to 50. To emphasize the validity of Levites' claim to the offerings and tithes of the Israelites, Moses collected a rod from the leaders of each tribe in Israel and laid the 12 rods overnight in the tent of meeting. The next morning, Aaron's rod was found to have budded and blossomed and produced ripe almonds in Numbers chapter 17, verse 8. The following chapter then details the distinction between Aaron's family and the rest of the Levites. While all the Levites were devoted to the care of the sanctuary, charge of its interior and the altar was committed to the Aaronites, alone in Numbers chapter 18, verses 1 to 7. Aaron, like Moses, was not permitted to enter Canaan with the Israelites because the two brothers showed impatience at Meribah in the last year of the desert pilgrimage, in the book of Numbers chapter 20, verses 12 to 13, when Moses brought water out of the rock to quench the people's thirst. Although they had been commanded to speak to the rock, Moses struck it with the staff twice, which was construed as displaying a lack of deference to the Lord, in Numbers chapter 20, verses 7 to 11. There are two accounts of the death of Aaron in the Torah. Numbers says that soon after the incident of Meribah, Aaron with his son Eleazar and Moses ascended Mount Or. There Moses stripped Aaron of his priestly garments and transferred them to Eleazar. Aaron died on the summit of the mountain, and the people mourned for him 30 days. The other account is found in Deuteronomy chapter 10, where Aaron died at Mosera and was buried. There is a significant amount of travel between these 2 points, as the itinerary in Numbers chapter 33 verses 31 to 37 records 7 stages between Moseroth and Mount Hor. Aaron was 123 at the time of his death. Aaron married Elisheba, daughter of Amminadab, and sister of Nahshon, of the tribe of Judah. The sons of Aaron were Eleazar, Ithamar, and Nadav, and Abihu. A descendant of Aaron is an Aaronite, or Cohen, meaning priest. Any non-Aaronic Levite descending from Levi but not from Aaron assisted the Levitical priests of the family of Aaron in the care of the tabernacle, later of the temple. The Gospel of Luke records that both Zechariah and Elizabeth, and therefore their son John the Baptist, were descendants of Aaron. The older prophets and prophetical writers beheld in their priests the delegates of a religious form inferior to the prophetic truth. Men without the Spirit of God and lacked the willpower requisite to resist the multitude in its idolatrous proclivities. Thus, Aaron, the first priest, ranks below Moses. He is his mouthpiece and the executor of the will of God, revealed through Moses, although it is pointed out that it is said 15 times in the Torah that the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron. Under the influence of the priesthood that shaped the destinies of the nation under Persian rule, a different ideal of the priest was formed. According to Malachi chapter 2, and the prevailing tendency was to place Aaron on a footing equal to Moses. At times Aaron and at other times Moses is mentioned first in Scripture. This is to show that they were of equal rank, says Rabbi Ishmael. In fulfillment of the promise of peaceful life, symbolized by the pouring of oil upon his head, Aaron's death, as described in the Adagai, was of a wonderful tranquility. Accompanied by Moses, his brother, and by Eleazar, his son, Aaron went to the summit of Mount Or, where the rock suddenly opened before him, and a beautiful cave lit by a lamp presented itself to his view. Moses said, "Take off your priestly raiment and place it upon your son Eleazar, and then follow me." Aaron did as commanded, and they entered the cave, where was prepared a bed around which angels stood. "Go lie down upon thy bed, my brother," Moses continued, and Aaron obeyed him without a murmur. Then his soul departed as if by a kiss from God. The cave closed behind Moses as he left, and he went down the hill with Eleazar, with garments rent and crying, "Alas, Aaron, my brother, thou the pillar of supplication of Israel." When the Israelites cried in bewilderment, "Where is Aaron?" angels were seen carrying Aaron's bier through the air. A voice was then heard saying, "The law of truth was in his mouth, and iniquity was not found on his lips. He walked with me in righteousness, and brought many back from sin," in Malachi chapter 2, verse 6. He died on the 1st of Ab. The pillar of cloud, which proceeded in front of Israel's camp, disappeared at Aaron's death. The seeming flaw between Numbers 20 and Deuteronomy 10 is solved by the rabbis in the following manner. Aaron's death on Mount Hor was marked by the defeat of the people in a war with the king of Arad, in consequence of which the Israelites fled, marching 7 stations backward to Mosera, where they performed the rites of mourning for Aaron. Wherefore it is said, "There at Mosera died Aaron." The rabbis particularly praised the brotherly sentiment between Aaron and Moses. When Moses was appointed ruler and Aaron high priest, neither betrayed any jealousy. Instead, they rejoiced in each other's greatness. When Moses at first declined to go to Pharaoh, saying, "O my Lord, send, I pray, by the hand of him whom you will send," in Exodus 4, he was unwilling to deprive Aaron of the high position the latter had held for the many years. But the Lord reassured him, saying, "Behold, when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart." Exodus 4. Indeed, Aaron was to find his reward, says Shimon Bar Yochai, for that heart which had leaped with joy over his younger brother's rise to glory greater than his was decorated with the Urim and Thummim, which were to be upon Aaron's heart when he goeth in before the Lord. Moses and Aaron met in gladness of heart, kissing each other as true brothers, and of them it is written, "Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. Psalm 133. Of them it is said, mercy and truth are met together, righteousness and peace have kissed each other. For Moses stood for righteousness. Deuteronomy 33. And Aaron for peace. Malachi 2. Again, mercy was personified in Aaron, according to Deuteronomy 33, and truth in Moses, according to Numbers 12. When Moses poured the oil of anointment upon the head of Aaron, Aaron modestly shrank back and said, who knows whether I have not cast some blemish upon this sacred oil, so as to forfeit this high office. Then the Shekinah wrote the words, behold, the precious ointment upon the head, that ran down upon the beard of Aaron, that even went down to the skirts of his garment, is as pure as the dew of Hermon. Psalm 133. Aaron's activity as a prophet began earlier than that of Moses. Hillel held Aaron up as an example, saying, be of the disciples of Aaron, loving peace and pursuing peace. Love your fellow creatures and draw them nigh unto the law. This is further illustrated by the tradition that Aaron was an ideal priest of the people, far more beloved for his kindly ways than Moses was. While Moses was stern and uncompromising, broking no wrong, Aaron went about as peacemaker, reconciling man and woman when he saw them estranged, or a man with his neighbor when they quarreled, and winning evildoers back into the right way by his friendly intercourse. As a result, Aaron's death was more intensely mourned than Moses's. When Aaron died, the whole house of Israel wept, including the women. Numbers 20. While Moses was bewailed by the sons of Israel. Only Deuteronomy 34. Aaron is venerated as a saint whose feast day is shared with his brother Moses and celebrated on September 4th. Aaron is also commemorated with other Old Testament saints on the Sunday of the Holy Fathers, the Sunday before Christmas. Aaron is commemorated as one of the Holy Forefathers in the calendar of saints of the Armenian Apostle Church on July 30th. He is commemorated on July 1st in the modern Latin calendar and in the Syriac calendar. Aaron is also mentioned in the Quran as the prophet of God. The Quran praises Aaron repeatedly, calling him a believing servant, as well as one who was guided and one of the victors. Aaron is important in Islam for his role in the events of the Exodus, in which, according to the Quran and Muslim tradition, he preached with his elder brother Moses to the Pharaoh of the Exodus. Aaron's significance in Islam, however, is not limited to his role as the helper of Moses. Islamic tradition also accords Aaron the role of a patriarch, as tradition records that the priestly descent came through Aaron's lineage, which included the entire house of Amram. The Quran contains numerous references to Aaron, both by name and without name. It says that he was a descendant of Abraham, Quran 4, and makes it clear that both he and Moses were sent together to warn the Pharaoh about God's punishment, Quran 10. It further adds that Moses had earlier prayed to God to strengthen his own ministry with Aaron, Quran 20, and that Aaron helped Moses as he too was a prophet, Quran 19, and very eloquent in matters of speech and discourse, Quran 28. The Quran adds that both Moses and Aaron were entrusted to establish places of dwelling for the Israelites in Egypt, and to convert those houses into places of worship for God. The incident of the golden calf as it is narrated in the Quran, paints Aaron in a positive light. The Quran says that Aaron was entrusted the leadership of the Israel while Moses was up on Mount Sinai for a period of 40 days. It says that Aaron tried his best to stop the worship of the golden calf, which was built not by Aaron, but by a wicked man by the name of As-Samiri. When Moses returned from Mount Sinai, he rebuked Aaron for allowing the worship of the idol, to which Aaron pleaded with Moses to not blame him when he had no role in its construction. The Quran then adds that Moses here lamented the sins of Israel and said that he only had power over himself and Aaron. Aaron is later commemorated in the Quran as one who had a clear authority and one who was guided to the right path. It further adds that Aaron's memory was left for people who came after him, and he is blessed by God with his brother. The Quran also says that people called Isa's mother Maryam, or Mary, a sister of Harun. Muslim scholars debated as of who exactly this Harun was in terms of his historical persona, with some saying that it was a reference to Aaron of the Exodus, and the term sister designated only a metaphorical or spiritual link between the two figures. All the more evidence when Mary was a descendant of the priestly lineage of Aaron. Others held it to be another righteous man living at the time of Christ by the name of Aaron. Most scholars have agreed to the former perspective and have linked Mary spiritually with the actual sister of Aaron, her namesake Miriam, whom she resembled in many ways. The Quran also narrates that centuries later, when the Ark of the Covenant returned to Israel, it contained relics from the family of Moses and relics from the family of Aaron. Muhammad in many of his sayings speaks of Aaron. In the event of Miraj, his miraculous ascension through the heavens, Muhammad is said to have encountered Aaron in the fifth heaven. According to old scholars, including Ibn Hisham, Muhammad in particular mentioned the beauty of Aaron when he encountered him in heaven. Martin Lings, in his biographical Muhammad, speaks of Muhammad's wonderment at seeing fellow prophets in their heavenly glory, Muhammad's wonderment at his brethren, and he mentioned in particular the great beauty of Aaron. According to Islamic tradition, the tomb of Aaron is located on Jabal Harun, or the Mount of Aaron, near Petra in Jordan, at 4,429 feet above sea level. It is the highest peak in the area, and it is a place of great sanctity to the local people. A 14th century Mamluk mosque stands here with its white dome visible from most areas in and around Petra.